Hi, I'm Maria Thea Harris of Velo Sews on social media. Welcome back to Sober 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style. Grab a cuppa and relax with us.
I guess I would like to say how much all of the other sewists in this community inspire me. And this is my big public thank you to all of them for being so wonderful and creative and supportive and inspiring. And I really appreciate that.
That's Elizabeth Denton, and you'll find her on Instagram at earletd or EARLETTED. A big thank you to the podcast Patreon supporters. I hope you'll join them. Go to patreon.com/Sew Organised Style. That's organised with an S to join them in supporting the running of Sew Organised Style podcast. I've been following Elizabeth for many years, since the days when blogs were popular, because of all of the reflective clothing that she used to, and still does, create. But in this interview, I found out a whole lot more about Elizabeth. So let's get into the discussion now.
Okay, good.
Well, we're here. That's so great.
It occurred to me, I don't know how long you guys have been doing podcasts.
Oh, I've been podcasting since 2019.
Oh, okay, cool. Nice.
Yeah. And then the pandemic just made it. I ended up doing 5 days a week, but I collaborated.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with
Okay.
different people. That's how long I've been podcasting for.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that's probably about the same time that I discovered the Sew Over 50 community, because I know I first was aware of it before I turned 50, and I just turned 52. So it's been at least 3 years. And I was so excited when I discovered it, because there's something about hitting that milestone and not having role models, especially in the sewing world. I don't know. It was like just where my style was moving and all that stuff. So I was very excited to find the community, because there's just like, oh, these are people like me. They're my age. They're going through the same stuff. They're making all these wonderful things. This is the place to be. So.
Can I just drill down on what you've said?
Sure.
You couldn't find people online who were in that space.
Well, it's the sewing part of it that I think is the specific thing.
Yeah.
My friends and I are all about the same age, more or less, right?
Right.
Like, I'm not a jeans and t-shirt person, and I'm wearing a hot pink shirt with bunnies on it. And this is casual for me. And finding other women, mostly there are some men who do some amazing stuff, but who are also sewing with bright colors and big prints and, not on trend. So that was what really did it for me. It's like, okay, so I can be an older woman, quote unquote,
yeah,
and still dress the way I want to dress, because there's other women out there who are doing it. It's okay for me to do it. I don't have to feel like the crazy aunt or something, you know what I mean?
Or alternatively, wearing the garments that someone in their 20s wears, which is fine, but if you're not comfortable, it's not fine.
Or people think you're trying too hard to be 25 again, when that is definitely not the case.
No. And it was a great time, but I don't want to go back there.
Yeah, exactly. I do not ever want to repeat anything that I did in my life. So
the other thing that I think you just touched on was it's a group of people who are also going through the same things in their life that you're experiencing.
Yeah. I don't know about the community at whole, but I'm in that menopause age, and I got divorced, and my parents are elderly, and a couple of friends and I have recently found ourselves in the same place where our parents are having big health issues, and suddenly we're dealing with our parents. And this one friend and I, neither of us have children, but we've got pets. We were joking about being in that age where we're taking care of dependents and elderly parents.
Yeah,
it's that kind of stuff. It was kind of unexpected, because my parents have already been really healthy, and their parents have all lived into their 90s and been pretty healthy. And so that was just sort of a kind of a place that I wasn't, I guess you're never really prepared for it, right? But it was not it was not a place I was prepared to be in right now. I thought I had some time.
Yeah. It's good that you're there for them, though.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's good, and it'll be fine, and it'll all work out. Yeah. So it's all fine. It's all fine. It was, but that's part of that like community of people going through the same stuff. And I work with people who are all younger than me, and so they're not there. I mean, some of them are, but anyway, enough about me. Enough about that part.
But this podcast is all about you. So where can people find you online?
I actually have 3 Instagram accounts. The main one that I use is, I feel like I'm going to say this wrong. It's Arlette D, and Arlette is my middle name, which I love. So it's E as in Elizabeth, ARLETTE, and then D for my last name. Yeah, I just mushed my Arlette D.
And do you still blog?
I don't blog anymore. I don't really know what to do with my blog, so it's just sort of lying dormant. But I haven't had the time, and I kind of reached a point around the time that my husband and I split up where I just didn't really want to say anything.
Yeah.
So it sort of lays there, and I may or may not get back to it. If I do, it might be something totally different. Who knows?
Who knows? That's right. Okay. Can you tell us what you usually sew?
Yes, well, I think I'm wearing a good example today. I almost always sew big, bright colored shirts. And I try to put something reflective in almost everything that I make. And you can't really see it, but this piping that's on here is all reflective piping. I did actually take the cording out of the piping because it makes it easier to work with and lays a little bit flatter. I just like to put that in there because I don't have a car. So I am walking to the bus stop, biking, walking to a zip car or, some sort of rental car. So I just like to be a little more visible.
Yeah.
But not necessarily wearing high-vis, sporty, bright yellow colors. I still want to look nice and fashionable, but I like it to be hidden.
A lot of the examples that you've done with reflective fabrics in a fashion sense are the types of inspiration that I've been able to learn from. That's why I've been following you for so long.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. But you started your sewing experience as a Girl Scout. Is that right?
I actually started younger than a Girl Scout.
Okay.
But that's sort of the key, like the standout moment. My mother and my aunt and my grandmother, their mom, are all sewing, knitting, embroidery, smocking, you name it, they've done all of it. So I grew up with that. My mom taught me how to sew. But I did my Girl Scout sewing badge when I was in elementary school. I don't remember much about my Girl Scouts experience or my sewing badge, but I made this skirt that I think I'm going to have to recreate because I keep thinking about it. It was probably in the late 70s or early 80s, and it was a wrap skirt, and it was sage green corduroy. And my mom had a Viking sewing machine that was one of those early ones that had the little cartridges that you could swap in and out for the different stitches. It was like one of the early computerized ones.
Wow.
Yeah, I did a fancy flower stitch on the hem. It was very exciting, and I was very proud of myself. And that was my Girl Scout badge capstone project, or whatever they call it. And I was so proud of it. But like I said, I keep thinking about it. So I think I'm going to have to recreate it.
Wrap dresses are timeless. So it's kind of almost Diane von Furstenberg-esque design.
Exactly. Well, and Vogue just released a couple of Diane von Furstenberg patterns. They're re-released.
Yeah.
That is definitely a sartorial goal of mine, has always been to have one of those wrap dresses. So as soon as I can find fabric that I like, that is going to go on my list. I might have to do a muslin first and test it out because I'm not really sure how those dresses look on me, but I still really want to make one.
I know that you have to do a toile because they're usually designed for someone who has a defined waist, and defined waists they're quite rare once you hit 50. They really are.
Yeah. Well, that's been kind of the interesting thing about hitting this age. I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but all the things that my mother said to me when I was younger have come true. And lo and behold, your body really does change once you hit a certain age. And I just don't know that look is going to fit me anymore, but I will still have to try it. Maybe I'll find an inexpensive knit that I like, but won't be upset if I hate it and can throw it away.
Yeah. You need to tick that box, right? So you got to do it.
It'll happen. The problem is that I always have 5,000 sewing projects lined up. So I say it'll happen when that could be, spring of 2027. I don't know.
Exactly.
Luckily, it's a timeless dress.
You've also done more than just sew when you were younger for the Girl Scouts. And I think when we were liaising, you talked about theatrical costuming.
Yeah.
Was that hands-on because you said that you were a wardrobe supervisor?
Yes, both.
Okay.
I am one of those people who has had a very diverse list of interests in my life. I started in junior high and high school. I played viola, and my goal in life was to be a classical musician. And I was playing with the college orchestra, and the musical director for the theater department came in and recruited a bunch of us to work in the pit orchestra for the musical that they were doing. And I didn't know anything about theater, but it sounded like fun. I did 4 musicals in the pit at the college. It was a blast. I had an absolute blast. At the time, of course, I couldn't drive, so my poor parents were driving me and picking me up at night from these. And somehow that interested me in costume design. The summer between my junior and senior year of high school, I helped out a friend of my mom's, and she was doing a show. And so I was helping make costumes for that. I sort of fell into doing theatrical costuming.
Okay.
Initially, I wanted to be a costume designer, and I did. I costumed a bunch of shows and I designed. It was amazing, because you have this vision of what you want it to look like, and you talk through the director with what they want. You kind of come up with everything, and I loved creating that world. And I really loved that. But being a costume designer doesn't necessarily pay because there are not that many costume designer jobs out there. So what I ended up doing was dressing for all of the Broadway shows that would come through town. And there's a union nationwide, so I would work for the local union. And the shows would come in, and we would help do laundry. We would help do all the ironing. We would dress the actors, all of that stuff. And then I found out you can do that as a career. I was able to combine my love of travel with my interest in theater. And so I was the wardrobe supervisor for Disney on Ice for 3 years. That was really cool because I did Beauty and the Beast on Ice for the first 2. And then the last year I was on The Wizard of Oz on Ice. Then I did 2 years in Australia, actually, with, it was like 101 Dalmatians or something like that. So that was cool. I got to spend a couple of months in Australia. I spent a couple of months in South America with one of the shows. That was just wardrobe. And the difference between costume design and wardrobe is costume design is the person designs the clothes, the costumes are made, and then they're basically turned over to the wardrobe supervisor after the show opens. So your job is taking care of the clothes. So it's much less glamorous. It was endless loads of laundry. It was endless loads of laundry, repairs, working with ice skaters. They're skating on, sharp blades. And so it was always holes in costumes and trying to do laundry for stuff that's soaking wet because it's been on the ice. But that just fueled the fire. And so I moved to New York City with the plan of getting a Broadway tour, except that then I ended up with my own apartment and I was working on a show and I was pretty happy there. I didn't want to go back out on the road. So I stayed in New York and dressed on Broadway shows for a long time.
Your experience in wardrobe supervising would be really valuable for people who are into mending.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about it, though, is when I first was working in a costume shop and I was worried about something and how it looked, and the costume designer said to me, 20 feet on a galloping horse, no one is going to see your repair. So that was always the joke, in the audience, as the actors are moving around, they can't see what your repairs look like. So I might not necessarily be the best person for repairs.
But now, it wouldn't have been invisible mending. It would have been visible mending.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Some of the stuff that we had to do, oh Lordy. We had these ball gowns that were chiffon. And of course, skaters, again, they're basically wearing knife blades on their feet. The number of those chiffon skirts. And the best way to do it was to just take the whole panel out of the chiffon down the front and stitch it back up, put a whole new piece in, because any actual patch showed terribly.
Yeah.
It was learning that kind of stuff. I still don't like to sew on chiffon.
Okay. I can understand that. Your history of having to deal with it is still fresh.
Yeah. It was a long time ago and it is still a fresh memory.
So if we go back to sewing your clothes so that you can ride a bike, Are there any particular designs or styles that you found were great for cycling to work and also being in the office?
Absolutely. And there's styles that I still like to wear today. I do actually bike in skirts a lot, but they have to be full skirts or fuller skirts. It's easier when they are knee length and not too short. That's also personal preference. I don't like super short skirts, but on a bike, it's just much easier. And I do wear bike shorts under all of my skirts and dresses when I'm biking. I have some really great ones from a bike designer that are like big prints and stuff like that. So if anyone sees them, they see them. But I also like culottes. That's been kind of a retro in and out design, but they're great because they're split pants. So they work great on a bike. I have a bike that has a top tube on it. So that's part of why I like a culotte. But then when you get off your bike, it looks like you're wearing a skirt. And there's some really great patterns out there now that are culottes, different styles of culottes. So those are great. I love those. I'm eyeing a new pair for this year. And the other thing that I like on a bicycle is because you tend to be a little bent over. And I have a fairly upright bike, but you're still bent over. So I like stuff that's longer in the back. So peplum styles or anything that's that asymmetrical. Anytime I see a pattern that has a longer dropped back, I'm instantly like, oh, that'd be the perfect bike pattern. And longer coats as well. But then I can't wear wide leg pants on a bike because they get caught in the chain and all the stuff. I don't have a covered chain. So those are kind of out. So on the days that I'm bike commuting, I have to make sure I'm wearing pants that won't get caught in the chain, something that's, flexible enough to move in, something that's going to cover my waist in the back. So it's this whole carefully choreographed style of what I wear when I'm biking versus what I'm wearing on days I'm working from home now.
Okay. And I know that working in the office, some people just go for basic black all week, but I couldn't see that wearing black when you're on a bike going to work would be safe.
No. And that's part of the reason why I've kind of embraced, I wear a lot of hot pink. Obviously, I love the color, but it's a really visible color. And so over the years, my winter coat is hot pink. My spring coat is pink. I have a lot of pink shirts. I have pink shoes because I feel like anything that I can do to make myself more visible that is not spandex and is not high vis yellow,
Yeah.
then that's what I want to do. So,
and who wouldn't want to have a hot pink winter coat,
This is my thought as well. And there's so much that goes with it. I have gray scarves and I have blue scarves and it all works out just fine.
Yeah. Oh, good. So our listeners won't know this, but I can see into Elizabeth's sewing room as she can see into mine. Elizabeth, what state is your sewing room in?
Knowing that I was going to do this, I did sort of clean over the weekend. Well, partially because on Sunday, I went through a big clean up all of the projects. Everybody has those little projects that are the mending and the darning and I just need to finish this. So I did all of that stuff on Sunday and then used the opportunity to organize a little bit. But you can see over my shoulder here, I have my most recent make is cut out on the table here, but I have this stack over here. Those are all my upcoming projects that I would like to have done by the end of July.
It's a neat pile of fabrics, this is so that listeners know, on your ironing board.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different fabrics.
Yeah.
Surprisingly muted colors, actually, when you look at the pile. There's a smoky blue, a rose pink, a pale blue. There's a black one on the bottom. And then the one in the middle is pale pink and lavenders and greens.
So by the time this podcast goes out, I'm going to encourage listeners to go to your Instagram account and see what you've made.
What I've finished up.
Yeah, what you finished. Yeah. Oh, great.
What I'm working on right now is the Tula Pink Roar collection. I don't quilt, but I love quilt fabrics because they're always bright and colorful. Her Roar collection is dinosaurs. So this is a big print that's pink and green, and it has little pterodactyls flying around in it. That one should be done soon. So check for that one.
Okay, great. So while you've been on Instagram and seeing what other people have sewn, are there any pattern designers that you've seen who feature older sewers on their grid or on their patterns?
Yes. And this is my list that I wrote down and then left in my office today. I do remember, because I wanted to mention this specifically, I recently last year discovered Style Falcon.
Yes.
And I was so excited because she specifically designs for older women. And I found it at a point where I was going through this trauma with how to dress around my new waistline. And she has a dress that I really want to make. That's the Make a Point dress.
Yes.
It has all these interesting shapes in the shoulders that I can't wait to make out of reflective fabric. So I think that's going to be really cool. That's going to be a fall project. I don't know anyone else who's made her stuff yet, but I'm super excited about trying that one.
I think she'll be really excited to hear that you've got that in your sewing queue for autumn.
Yes. Yeah. Well, autumn is the best time to sew with reflective fabrics because that's when daylight changes. I don't know if you guys do that in Australia or not, but it's darker earlier. Okay, it's darker earlier. That's when you really want to be more visible. So that's when I sort of ramp up the reflectivity in my clothing. So
okay.
I guess I would like to say how much all of the other sewists in this community inspire me. And this is my big public thank you to all of them for being so wonderful and creative and supportive and inspiring. And I really appreciate that.
It's really nice when I speak to people in the sewing community and they're able to express their appreciation for all the work that everyone else does in sharing their makes. So thank you, Elizabeth.
That's the best part. I'm inspired by everyone daily.
So what advice would you give to people who are about to sew again if they haven't sewn for a while? So, they might have started as in high school, left it because life happened and they're starting again.
That's a really interesting question and one I've been thinking about. And I just recently taught my first sewing class. So this is kind of fresh on my mind.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Yeah, it was 3 women who, just as what you said, they sewed in school and then life, and then they wanted to get back into it. And we made pajama pants, which was fun. And I was trying really hard to say, from my experience, I went through this whole phase where, I did sewing for theater. I told you 20 feet on a galloping horse. So I wasn't very particular when I started sewing for myself again about following the directions. And I have learned over the years, there's a reason why they tell you to do things. There's a reason why the seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch. Don't take that 5/8 of an inch and try to do it in a 1/2 inch. It doesn't work. It's not going to turn out well. And to try to follow some of those basics, because I think you'll be happier with it than if you try to cheat it in some way. And then once you've learned the basics, then go figure out how to cheat it. That's totally fine because then you'll have that foundation. But I think what's changed a lot is there's so many Instagram, first of all, with everybody and their fabulous videos and makes, and everybody shares their technique. So definitely go through all of those. Watch the videos online. There's a ton on YouTube. Actually watch people do it. I think that's a big help. Always wash your fabric first. Always press your seams. Always, always, always. And then explore PDF patterns. I think this is a really great thing with the sewing world now is that you can find a pattern that you like by an independent sewing company or an independent designer, download it, tape it all together, which sometimes drives me crazy.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Right. Or take it to a print shop. But the nice thing about the PDF pattern is if you make something and you don't like it, you can print it out again, tape it back together again, and then make all of your alterations. So it's not like, when you buy a traditional pattern from the fabric store and you cut it out, then you're kind of stuck because you've cut out that paper and you either have to go buy another one or figure out how to alter what you've made.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to not get discouraged because you can just print it out and start all over again.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I know it's using a lot of paper, but you still have it. It's not going to get lost unless you can't figure out where you've filed it on your laptop.
Right.
Or in the cloud.
That's a whole different topic, though.
All right.
We've all been there.
All right. I'll stop. Elizabeth, thank you for coming onto the podcast for Sober 50. You've been an absolute joy to interview. I'm so pleased that I've been able to meet you finally in person.
Right.
And thank you for sharing your experience because it's what we see in Sober 50, and I'm really pleased that you've had this opportunity to tell us as well.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
This episode of Sober 50 podcast on Organised Style was produced by me, Maria Theoharis, with permission of Elizabeth, sound by bensound.com. Many thanks for the ongoing support of the podcast Patreon contributors. I hope you'll join them. Go to patreon.com/So Organised Style, that's organised with an S, to join them in supporting the running of So Organised Style podcast. Their ongoing support enables me to produce these podcasts for free. You can subscribe to So Organised Style podcast, but with an S, not a Z, on all good podcast apps. Make sure you go back and listen to our free Sober 50 podcast archive on So Organised Style. Make sure you direct message Sandy and the editors at Sober 50 on Instagram to contribute to the ongoing posts, challenges and guest editorial spots to promote the community of over 49,000 followers. We look forward to joining you in your sewing room next time. Stay safe, everyone.